Well, hello, everybody. Getting ready to record episode 187 of Mike in the Midwest. So here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 187 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Be Our Guest Mike, and we're recording this show on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, and hope this show finds you well. We're the day after President's Day. So I hope that you had a nice, hopefully here in the States, 3-day weekend, and maybe you got a little bonus time off. And we're going to talk about some bonus time off today for kids in this area, this neck of the woods, which is going to kind of drive the topic of today's show in just a few minutes. But yeah, it's a little unexpected. We're going to get to that in a minute. But first of all, let's kind of talk about what's going on here around the Be Our Guest Podcast Studios. You may wonder, hey, you're a super patron. You listen to the shows. You probably join us live on Monday afternoons when we record the podcast at around 5:30 Eastern. Of course, this week we're going to have Ricky and Scott joining me, and we're going to do listener questions. We're going to do the Friday show. We were not there yesterday, and I was ready to go. Had everything fired up, ready to go, and I got sick. I was not feeling well yesterday, so we had to call an audible. Did not record yesterday, so hey, guess what? Today is a 3-podcast day for me. So you can join us if you're listening to the show right away this afternoon at around 5:30 Eastern. We're going to record again. So join us. We're going to do the Friday and Wednesday show. So listener questions, if you didn't get them in, you can do that. You can join us in the chat. That of course be at on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. We got 5 places you can tune in live. So anywhere. And put your comments in, put your questions in, and join us as we record this afternoon on Tuesday and be a part of the show there. You can also get your questions in to Mike at beourguestpodcast.com in the inbox, and we'll get to those right away. So that's why we didn't record yesterday. If you're wondering where were we, that's where we were. I was feeling awful. When I don't record a podcast, it means when they ask about your pain, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 was where I was yesterday. Not good. But I'm back. I was just severely dehydrated. So I'm drinking a little Gatorade and doing the best I can. I was able to walk my 10 miles this morning. So that's how I judge. Am I alive? I'm alive. I'm here. I'm able to do my travel agent work. I'm able to book Disney cruises in Walt Disney World, Disneyland vacations for folks. So Mike Rallman, the robot, is back. The podcasting robot is here. We're good. We are back to where we need to be. This weekend, we're going down to Springfield, Missouri. I'm excited for that. Gonna get to visit Drury College. Do you guys know what Drury College is famous for? In my eyes, Drury College is famous for one thing, and I haven't researched it, but I do know this one fact about Drury College in Springfield, Missouri, down in the Ozarks. It is famous because of one alumni, Bob Barker. Bob Barker went to Drury College. Yes, the host of The Price is Right for years and years. And the reason we're going there is because Mallory's cheer squad at Francis Howell High School is competing for state. Now, they competed for state in the overall cheerleading championships a couple of months ago, and they got second. We're still bitter about that. We think we got homered by because we were competing down in the southeastern corner of the state. Yeah, if you ever look at a map of Missouri, I know a lot of you guys aren't in Missouri, but if you look at a map of Missouri, we have what's called the Boot Heel, right down in the southeastern corner, right above Arkansas. It's weird. I don't know why that part's in Missouri, but it's called the Boot Heel. We are right down by the Boot Heel. There's a little Cape Girardeau's where the university, it's called Southeast Missouri State. Okay, there's a state college down there, university, and right by there is a town called Jackson. They beat us, but they were like right next to the university. We felt like all the judges were from there, and that was like their home turf. We had a better routine. We didn't have as many bobbles, as many errors. Anyway, we got homered by them, but they got first. We got second. I'm not bitter, but it's hard when you're in a sport that's judged. I like that Paige, the older daughter, right? She played soccer. She played basketball. She played, cross country, all these sports where there weren't judges. Like you knew who won by who scored the most goals, who ran the fastest. It was easy, there wasn't a lot of judging. Cheerleading is so like, if you had a kid that was like Trisha's daughter's a swimmer, who wins? It's the fastest. But like I know some people have daughters or sons that are like ice, figure skaters. Well, that's hard because it's judged. It's so like cheerleading's like that. So anyway, and I know we have a lot of cheer parents. It is kind of frustrating in that point. But anyway, so now we're going down for a second competition. They have a whole different state competition for something called game day. So this is basically a whole separate subdivision of what you would see on the sidelines of a football game. So they have to use like the megaphones, they have to use their flags, they have to use their chants, they have to use their stunts, and it all has to be built into one routine that's 2 minutes long. They have to use like their cardboard, like those they have to hold up the letters FHHS. It's a whole thing. Now, I truly believe we should win this. Now, again, I'm a homer. So I think the Vikings should bring this home. We should row the boat. We should bring this in. The Vikings, we'll see. But I'm excited to see Bob Barker's old college. We'll be down there Friday and Saturday down in Springfield. If you don't know from where we live, west of St. Louis, about a 3.5 hour drive. I'm just glad because I work from home. I never leave the house. So it'd be good for me just to see outside these four walls of my house for a couple days. So that's where I'll be on Friday and Saturday. So I'm excited just to go down to see the Ozarks for a little bit. You just go down Interstate 44. So that's where I'm headed this weekend. Again, we should be back for the live call-in show on Sunday night, barring anything bad happening. So we should have that. So that's kind of my big plans. That's when you're getting old, when your big plans are going to watch a cheerleading competition and you're super stoked for it. The other thing that I wanted to kind of touch base with you guys and see how you're feeling. And if you kind of feel me like, and I know you do because you guys are Disney fans like me, that's where we all make this connection, is that our next Disney vacation is not a Walt Disney World vacation. We're not going to Walt Disney World this summer. We're going on a Disney cruise, just our family. And this is so weird for us because we almost always travel with the Gardeners. We almost always vacation with Scott and his family, or we do a podcast cruise. We do that every other year. A lot of times we'll travel with the Foresters. We'll travel with Ricky's family, but this summer we're just going us because we never ever travel just us, just the four of us, just Pam, Mike, Mallory, and Paige. And hopefully Paige can go. I mean, she's trying. She says she should be able to go. Her basketball team that she's the director of, they're going to try to do a foreign trip. They're going to try because that's what basketball teams do in the summer now. It's a kind of a new thing over the last 5 years. They'll travel overseas, like to Europe or something, and play in a couple tournaments over there and then come back. They're going to do that in July, but hopefully they're going to do it later in the month so she can go with us on the cruise because we're going at the beginning of the month. But anyway, I got this weird, really excited feeling to go on a vacation with just us four. Now, I love our podcast cruises because I know I travel with a lot of you guys on the podcast cruises, right? And I love when we're on vacation with the Gardeners because that makes it, I mean, Scott's my brother from another mother. I love when we're at Disneyland. I mean, we have so much fun. I mean, you guys have probably seen us like, we don't get into trouble, but I mean, we have so much fun together. Like he is my brother. But it's so weird because planning this vacation with just our family, it's taken me back almost 20 years. It's taken me back to my roots because I've started looking at vlogs of the Disney Fantasy and plus we've never been to the Eastern Caribbean where we're going. We've never been to Tortola. We've never been to St. Thomas. Now I've been to Castaway Cay many, many times. We're going to have 3 sea days on this cruise, which I love sea days. They're my favorite. And we've been on the Fantasy before once, but I love the length of this cruise. And I love that we're going to be able to spend time together as a family. I'm so excited to get back on a ship for that length of time, a 7-night cruise. That's going to be so great because I love the cruise ships. And I love that I will have time to take on the Aqueduct. You don't have to rush. It's not going to be over before you know it. Pam and I will have time to do a brunch at Palo and probably a dinner at Palo. We'll get a chance to go to the main dining rooms more than once. We'll get to spend time in Europa and get to go to the Tube and see the adult dining and do some tastings and you spend some time up at Satellite Falls and there's so many great things, but we'll have the time on the ship to do these things. So, I'm still 130 some days out, but the cruise fever is hitting me hard. I don't know if it's because, and I think this is what it is. And you can kind of give me the feedback again, patreon.com/BRGS podcast. I think what it is, it's a combination of things. Here in the Midwest, the weather's starting to churn. And I think this is where Scott and I talk about this a lot. Like the weather is starting to churn from winter to spring, right? Like right now, today, it's going to be 65. Now we had 6 inches of snow just about on Friday. We had 6.5 inches of snow one day. Whew, boom. We got 6.5 inches of snow. 2 days later, it was warm. The snow's, it's almost all gone. I see snow right outside my window, but it's the last lingering bits of snow. It's getting warm. It's going to be 65 today. So I got that spring fever, which always makes me think of my vacation for the summer. So I think it's that. And I'm in that lull between sports. So I don't have football to watch. Baseball hasn't started yet. Our basketball team at Mizzou is horrible this year. We have not won a league game this entire season. So I'm not invested in the basketball team. Our AD just left yesterday unexpectedly, took off to Arizona. So I don't have anything to watch right now. Like it's so bad on Friday and Saturday nights. I'm watching live PD again, or it's called On Patrol Live. We are not invested in any TV shows. We have nothing to watch. So I've been watching like old vlogs of the Disney Fantasy Eastern Caribbean cruises. So I'm like invested in this cruise, but I think it's the springtime. Like it's downtime for sports. I think that's kind of the perfect storm right now for the excitement for this cruise. Also, our final payment's coming up. I mean, it's 120 days out for a 7-night cruise. So we're kind of, we're getting to that point where it becomes real when you have to make that big fat final payment, which kind of makes you start to think about things because you got to buy your air and you got to get that stuff together. So where do you stand? Like, are you looking forward to when does it burn for you? When do you start getting excited and when does it become real for your next Disney adventure? Because it's burning like fire hot for me for this cruise, and it's July 6th for us on the Fantasy. Like it is burning. Like I've been wearing my Disney Cruise Line shirts. I mean, July 6th is when we're sailing. It is February, but I am just burning hot for that. So that's where I stand right now. Okay, real quick, let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week we talked about the heartograms that we sold on Valentine's Day at Wedgwood Elementary. Man, we had a good time with those. Trisha says, and Trisha was down in St. Louis, and I hope she had a good time. Blues did not win when they went to the game yesterday, but Lorelei and her husband, they were Toronto fans, and so I think they had a good time with that. She says, I hate receiving flowers as a gift. I prefer a gift that lasts longer than a few days. Plus, I have allergies, so it's more of a torture device for me. Instead, my husband bought me a Lego rose set to build. I like that. I mean, flowers, but permanent flowers, and you could take them apart and they're useful. Oh, that's smart. I like that. Trish says, I remember doing jump roping to raise money. As a fairly tall student, I hated it. The ropes were never long enough, and the hard plastic coating would leave welts on my ankles. I struggled with that too as a tall person myself. I do remember those plastic ropes that would smoke you, and they were never tall enough or long enough for me either. Trisha, I share your pain. I didn't even think about that. So you just said that, and I had they would hit me in the head because by the way, here's a little Mike in the Midwest for you. You know how you get the superlatives in your high school yearbook, your 12th grade year, your senior year? I was voted in high school. Guess what I was voted? You're probably thinking the most talkative, but no, pretty much, but I wasn't. Most uncoordinated. And I'll tell that story some other day because I got it during my baseball season, my senior year. But I could tell you that story, but I'll hold it for now. But I was voted most uncoordinated senior class, 1992. Anyway, Trish continues. Also, we will be driving back from St. Louis when you read this, and I have a mission to try Emo's Pizza. I'll have to provide a review, which she did, and it was on the call-in show that we did Sunday night, and it will air Thursday, so check that out. Also, Michelle down in Boynton Beach, Florida. who actually may be on my cruise with me, which would be awesome. That'd be really cool. She says, we did heartograms also, and then Kissmas grams for Christmas with Hershey Kisses. I even have a few of the cards saved in my high school scrapbook. Holy cow. I wish we'd have saved a few. Back to the video rental topic. I remember actually renting a VCR from our local store before we had our own. Also, had one friend whose parents didn't care what we rented and was traumatized by Pet Cemetery as a kid at a sleepover. That's where we also saw all the rated R movies my parents would have never let me watch. Yes, we watched a movie called Cat's Eye that freaked me out. I still remember that at Tim Meister's house. Well, God, we had to have been in like third grade or something at a sleepover. And it was a freak. I don't remember what the movie is about. I just remember it scared the crud out of me. Cat's Eye. I just remember the box, because you remember the boxes were like a big deal. Like you'd see the box will look cool. It's called Cat's Eye. I think it was called Cat's Eye. I just remember it was like a freaky movie. I have no idea what it was about. I just remember I was scared to death. Okay, today's topic. And it comes ripped from the headlines from right now, from last night. Mallory was off school Friday for professional development day in Francis House School District, where they go to school, because they made this into like a mini break, right? Because Monday was President's Day, so the teachers had professional development on Friday, so the kids got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They got this little mini break. So I'm like, God, man, when I was in school, we never got breaks like this. It seems like kids always get these like 4-day weekends now. I mean, the kids have it. So again, here I'm sounding like, grouchy old Mike in the Midwest here, right? I mean, in my day, we never got off school, which we didn't. I mean, I'm sorry, we didn't. But here's the deal. They got off Friday because the teachers had to go in for PD, but still, a day without students is a day without students. It's not bad. Anyway, they got a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, President's Day. So they got a 4-day weekend. So we get this notification at about 5:00 yesterday saying that tomorrow, which is today, Tuesday and Wednesday, there will be no school in the Francis House School District. So I'm thinking, wait a second. It is going to be, okay, here's the temperatures of the Francis House School District where we live. It's going to be 65 today and sunny. Tomorrow, it's going to be 70 and sunny. So it's not going to be a snow day. The weather is awesome. It's going to be sunny. So I'm like, what's going on? Okay. They've been off since Friday now. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They're going to be off Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we get a follow-up message about 10 minutes later. Due to issues with our computer systems, it's not safe for students to attend. We cannot keep the students. We're not sure we can keep the students safe and have a positive instructional environment. So upon further review, as somebody who listens to a lot of tech podcasts and stuff like that, what I know has happened at this point is that our school district has been ransomwared. They have been hit by somebody who locked them up. Probably the IT systems, probably the MIS systems, and ransomwared them. And so apparently we've gotten more information since. They have been working on this since early in the weekend, probably since Friday. They were hit by this early, and they've been trying to resolve the issues the entire weekend, Monday, and they still haven't been able to bring the systems back online. So if you don't know what ransomware is, and I'm not an IT person, we have a lot of IT people that listen. They could probably explain this a lot better than me, but I just listen to podcasts and try to understand these things as somebody that's got a degree in elementary education that is not very smart in these things. But basically what'll happen is a group of hackers will look for very easy targets, very vulnerable targets like school districts or like hospitals. And you'll think, why would you go after those kind of targets? Why wouldn't you go after like Disney or Apple? Well, places like Disney or Apple are going to have very robust, locked down systems because they have the means, right? They want to lock down their systems. They know that they have to, right? Banks, they're going to make sure that they're safe. School districts and hospitals and so forth that do have a lot of medical records and records of students and stuff like that. they don't have budgets that have a lot of money to lock to keep bad guys out. They don't think that they're high value targets. So they kind of keep security on the back burner. So they're kind of soft targets. So that's why these hackers, and they're usually from overseas, they will go after these school districts. It's random, I think. It could be students within the district. Who knows? I mean, there's smart kids out there, but I'm guessing it could be somebody else, hacking groups. They go in and what they do is they access these systems, they grab them, boom, encrypt the system, put a password on it. The district now can't get in it because it's encrypted, it's locked with a password. Well, the district now does not know the password. They cannot get back in their system. And what happens is typically is the hackers contact the admin for the school district and say, "We will unlock your system for you for X amount of Bitcoin," because Bitcoin is very hard to trace. And either you pay the ransom and maybe or maybe not they'll unlock your system, or you're kind of out of luck. And what you got to do to fight this is hopefully you have a backup of your whole entire network where you could just say, "Forget you guys, we're just going to restore from a backup like you would your phone if it crashed or if somebody got access to it." The problem is a lot of times school districts, hospitals don't have real-time backups. You can't go because I mean, if you have a backup that's a year old, well, you're going to lose all your information since the time of that backup. So I'm sure this is the pickle that they're in right now, is that they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They're going to, you don't want to pay the ransom because then you're just encouraging this behavior. Plus, these ransoms are usually quite large. And I mean, school districts don't have great budgets. So I don't know what's going on, but I just know they don't have school today, Tuesday. They're doing AMI days, which AMI means there is a protocol where they're doing lessons from home. So they are doing lessons that are on Blackboard or whatever online program. So they are having learning days at home. Now, Mallory spent the night at her friend's house, and apparently she's working over there, I guess. But they are doing online work today and tomorrow, and they said hopefully they'll be back by Thursday. The email said, but they could be out there the whole week. So this is a big deal. So this got me to thinking of days I went to school as a kid. Now we didn't have AMI days back then, but there were days when I went to school as a kid where I went to school just like it's a normal day and things happened. So when I was a little kid, now this was like this was when I was in second grade. And this is where I want to get feedback from you guys. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast for next Tuesday. If anything crazy happened to you where you went to school and the day went sideways, and I'm gonna give you a few examples for me throughout my career, both as a student and as a teacher. So one day, probably the earliest day this happened was I remember when I went to North County Christian School, second grade. We went to school. I was in second grade, and about halfway through the day, the sewers backed up because it was a church. Like our school was a church, but it had some classrooms added onto it as a Nazarene church. And it smelled so bad. And I have a gag reflex like nobody's business. I mean, it was foul. And I just remember that I cried in our classroom and they sent me to the office. And I just remember crying in Mrs. Price's office. She was the principal. And it was so bad that they called my parents and I got to go home. Now, nobody else went home, but I just remember it smelled so good. If you know me, you know that I'm not good with like stuff like that, like bad smells or if like there's sounds. So it all started back when I was little. But I just remember to this day, it almost to even talk about it right now, I'm about to get sick. Like it was so foul. But I just remember that day that it was so bad that I forget Mrs. Stevens, I think was my second grade teacher. She's like, "Mike, would you like to go to the office to Mrs. Price's office? It might not smell as bad." So he's like, "Yes." And I went down there and it smelled worse. And I went to they called my parents and I got to go home. So that was one day where it went a little sideways. Was not expecting school to go that way that day. Um, there was so if you ever went to school in the Midwest, there's a lot of these days, right? Where there's tornado warnings. And you probably experience these. Now, Michelle, she probably had hurricane days. We never had those, obviously, in Missouri, but there were lots of days, not lots, but I'd say probably 7 or 8 times where you go to school in the morning. It's fine morning, like it's usually in the springtime. Usually this time of year to the end of the class, to the end of the school year. But you might be coming back from recess, coming back from PE, or it could just be a regular old afternoon. And, here comes the tornado siren. Because thing was, it seemed like the tornado sirens were always by the elementary schools, which is a good idea, right? There was one right outside my classroom at Wedgwood. I mean, it sat maybe 50 feet from my window where I taught at Wedgwood for years. And when that sucker went off, man, it was like blowing into, and my room was right next to Pam. She hated it too. I mean, it blew right into our windows because we didn't have air conditioning. That's how old we are. We didn't even have air conditioning in our classrooms for the first like 5 years. So we always had our windows open. And when that sucker went off, dude, it was like rocked your world. So of course, I don't know if because you might not be from a place where you did tornado things. Boom, you went to the hall and you did the duck and cover thing. So kids would get down, squat in the hall. You put your head, I'm doing it here, kind of in the video, but you put your your arms over the back of your neck or over the back of your head. It wasn't gonna matter. Sometimes you go in the boys' bathroom. Fortunately, we never did have a tornado hit during school. Um, but it was always an exciting time. Now you only had to do that if there was a tornado warning. So there was a tornado watch. That's the difference. Like a tornado watch, and I'm a weather geek and always have been. So I was always kind of the go-to person at the school. Tornado watch, I was always like on alert, telling everybody, okay, let's all be ready because this could happen. But if that siren went off, it meant there was a warning in our area. That meant let's get our butts out in the hall and let's get ready. And I'd always have once we had cell phones, I'd always have my cell phone watching the radar to know if we're all clear. And yeah, so that was one of those things where you go to school, you weren't expecting it, but then all of a sudden you're out in the hall. And then after that, teaching never happened because the kids were so amped up that it was kind of over. There were also, I remember a couple days teaching at Wedgwood where the heat didn't work. And it was like in the middle of winter. So the kids had to have on coats. And this was actually when they were doing the transition, when they were putting in air conditioning, they were putting it in over the winter. And for some reason they screwed up the heat. The heat, obviously we always had heat, but they screwed up the heat when they were trying to put in our air. They're doing an HVAC overhaul and they screwed up the heat. The heat always worked. And so we had to wear coats. And like, I just remember the one day it was so cold, but they didn't let us go home. They just said, put on your coats and just, we're going to be okay. I mean, it was so cold that day in our classrooms that I just remember that we tried to keep doing lessons, right? I was trying to, I think I was doing long division that day too. And it was one of those days where the kids were like looking at me. I told them, like, they're like, Mr. Rahman, can we wear gloves? I'm like, yeah, we can wear gloves. It's freezing in here. Like, I'm going to wear gloves. And so I didn't have a chalkboard. I had a dry erase board. And so I'm writing, I had gloves on. So I'm trying to write with like dry erase board, on my dry erase board with gloves on up front, and I'm doing okay. But the kids are like, they're looking like Eskimos. It's like, if you ever saw the movie Christmas Story, right? It's like, what's the kid's name? I forget. But I mean, they're all sitting out there with like hoods on and zipped up coats. I mean, I felt bad for them because I mean, the opposite was when we didn't have air conditioning, kids would just be dying. It'd be 100 degrees in my classroom. I'd have 7 box fans on and they'd be sticking to their desk because of the sweat. I mean, you can't learn if you're not, you don't have to be like super comfortable, but I mean, like in extreme heat or extreme cold, you're not learning. You're just trying to survive. Right. So I just remember that day, the day we didn't have heat when they screwed something up with the HVAC. Oh my God, it was so miserable. So we didn't sign up for that either that day, but we still, I don't know why we did. The thing we always said as teachers was they get paid. The state pays our district money as long as the kids are there through lunch. That was the deal. Because it counts as a full school day as long as the kids are there through lunchtime. Because it counts as a school day. So they would just like power through. And so, oh my gosh, I just remember that day was so miserable. There was also a day where there was no lights because there was no electricity in the building. And I just remember that we taught like in the dark. And that was just another challenge. Like I was like, are you kidding me? Like we're doing this with no electricity. It was like Little House on the Prairie Day. So we didn't have lights. This was back in I remember that day was like when everything this was after I did everything on a smart board. So I'm like, oh my God, am I going back? Like, are we going to use like a little primer? So I was actually teaching out of books, but it was so dark I could hardly see the books. There was no learning happening that day. And of course, like that's the day you want to show a movie, you want to use your overhead projector. Oh, such a struggle. Okay, now here's the one that I'm going to close out because we're going a little long here. This was the crazy day. Now, this was one we knew about going into. Now, this was probably only where I lived. If you're in the Midwest, you might have had this, but this was like a real Missouri thing. God, I can't. Oh, I remember the guy's name now. So when I was in high school, we themed our yearbook to this day. When I was graduating in high school, I graduated in 1992. We themed our yearbook to this event. Our yearbook was called Whole Lot of Shaking Going On because in 1992, there was a guy named Ivan Browning, Dr. Ivan Browning, who swore that there was going to be an enormous earthquake that happened, and he knew the exact date that it was going to happen. Now, remember, I don't know if you know your history, but the biggest earthquake ever to hit the United States happened in Missouri. It happened in New Madrid, Missouri, which again is down in the Boot Heel. It's in southeast Missouri. New Madrid, Missouri is a city down by the Boot Heel. And it happened in like the late 1800s. And it was such a violent earthquake. It made the Mississippi River run backwards, and it ran backwards and formed Kentucky Lake. And it was crazy. It was a huge earthquake. But this guy, he swore that he figured out that he knew that an earthquake was going to happen this specific day. I think it was in December. So now I went to a high school of about 2,500 kids. It was one of the biggest high schools in the state. So about half of the kids this day did not go to high school, did not come to school. Cause I mean, people were like, this guy's a nut, but I mean, why go to school? Cause the school might fall down. My parents are like, you're going. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go too. Cause I just kind of want to see what's going to happen. I'm just going to keep my head on a swivel. And my friends, we all went. Cause like, it was senior year and, we played sports and we had to be there anyway. But what we did was we all wore hard hats. Right. So, and the thing was, it was a fun day because half the kids weren't there. So the teachers weren't making you do work anyway, because they weren't going to make you they wouldn't have to teach the lesson twice. So everybody had a good time that day. But I just remember, of course, the earthquake didn't happen. You can't predict earthquakes like that, like ahead of time. You don't do that in science, at least yet. And this guy, he didn't get it right, obviously. But it was just, I just remember like it was fun because like all day everybody was like on edge. Like, is it happening now? And people, of course, I was always screwing around. So like I remember in science class with those big black lab tables, I just like, I'd just shake it and because they make noise. But it's like you gotta embrace the day. Right. You got to embrace maybe I scared the crowd out of people. I shouldn't have done it looking back now that I'm 50, but it's one of those things like you never know what the day is going to bring you. And so those were days where you went to school expecting something and the day turned out to be different, but you got to make the best of the situation. Okay. So that was just kind of a fun some stories from my childhood. There was one serious thing I wanted to leave you with on today's show, and it's been bugging me since the Super Bowl. And I really wanted to get your thoughts on this, kind of our little focus group. And it's from the Super Bowl, and it's Travis Kelce and Andy Reid. Okay, so the coach and the big tight end. So you've all seen that meme, right? Of Travis Kelce where he yells at Andy Reid, and everybody's put in they've made a meme out of it. They've put in the words, like, I can't even think of a good, what you can make it say, but it's turned into this huge meme. And maybe it's just me as getting older and thinking about things, but God, it's so bothering me that as a person and as somebody who's been a coach, because I coached our speed skaters for quite a while, and as a teacher and as somebody who tries to lead people and has done that in the past, but is also somebody who likes to be a student, who likes to be led by others. That moment in time where he had 123 million people watching in that moment, I know he was fired up and he wanted to be in on that play because he feels like he could make a difference in the game, right? That there's a fire in his belly, and I get that as a competitor because I've always been a competitor my whole life. I want to win in everything I do. When I do a podcast, I want to do the very best podcast I can do for you each and every time. When I help somebody plan a vacation, I want to help plan the very best vacation. I want this guest to have the very best vacation each and every time. You better believe that. When I go to a race, I want to give my best effort. I'm not going to win the race. I mean, I'm slow, I'm tall, I'm old, but I want to give the very best effort that Mike Rallman can give on that day. I just want to, that's just who I am. And I get that Travis Kelce wants to have that fire in his belly, and I love that about him. But here's the thing. They won the game in the end, right? They won the Super Bowl. And I was thinking about this. Like, that picture is forever. That picture, that moment that is captured is forever of him screaming at Andy Reid, at his coach. And I mean, the look on his face, the anger, the just the meanness. And he bumped into Andy Reid. You can say it was playful, and Andy Reid did the right thing. He took the high road in the press conference after the game and said he does this. He's a fiery athlete. I like it. That's what a coach does to protect his player. But he bumped into his coach. He got physical with his coach, and he got angry. He got up in his face of the coach, and that's not a good look. And that's forever. And they still won the game. And I just, like, is a dad and as a coach, I think that is such a teachable moment, that moment is forever. And how could that have been handled better? You got to keep, I know you got to have emotions, because that's what players do. And that's what people in life do. You got to be emotional sometimes, because that's what brings you to the next level. But there are times to take your emotions a different way, I think, because that moment is captured. That just, I would not want that picture of me to be a legacy, because that could be something people remember him for. And he's got so many great things to remember him for. I don't even know what I'm saying, but I've dwelled on that, and I've thought about, man, I wouldn't want that moment to be me. I wouldn't want to have that moment, because it won the game anyway. You know what I'm saying? And it's just to me, that's such a negative thing out of such a positive night. It's just one of those things where it is hard to keep your emotions in check, but it is so important to do so. I was going to put that out on last week's show and I forgot. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think about that? Maybe I'm totally off. Because again, I like to learn, and I like to bounce ideas off people that I care about and people that I believe in. And that's you guys. All right. I'm jumping out of here, but I want to get your thoughts on that. So let me know. Patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast. All right. You guys have a great week. Hope you're having an awesome one. Hope you're having an even better one than I am. That's pretty good. All right. So you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.